Welcome to Crosstown Cardboard, episode 84, and the title of this one is Bleecker is the Place to Be. The man who came up with that title, he shoots about the same percentage with titles as Steph Curry does from the free throw line. That's Craig at New York City Sports Cards, the math teacher, the soccer coach in New York City, which is where the world-famous Bleecker Trading is located. We'll get to that in just a second. I am Carmine at Carmine's Cards, from Austin, New York, but now in Greenville, South Carolina, as a sports storyteller. And we have a great sports card story to tell, Craig. So if you want to introduce our great guest who we have today.
Right on. So we've got Mark Zablow. Thank you for joining us, the founder of Bleecker Trading. Why we wanted to get this conversation going is Bleecker is, I would say, maybe one of the most well-known brands in this hobby, and it only seems to be growing. If you've seen the hats, you've seen the hoodies, you've seen the red diamond, you know Bleecker. We reference it plenty on this podcast. So what better than to get the founder and the brains behind the operation? So Mark, thank you for joining us. How are you feeling today?
I feel great, especially after all those kind words. It's always nice to hear what people have to say, nice things about Bleecker. So thank you. And excited to be on episode 84. Craig, you've been coming around for a minute. So I remember when the episodes, for you guys were in single digits. So
Right.
Pretty cool. I'd say in honor of 84, who's that, Randy Moss?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So let's go long today, guys.
Straight cash only.
Let's go deep.
That's right. So go ahead, Craig.
All right, let's just get right into it. I would say maybe the year was 2020, and I heard Bleecker Trading. I knew it was located in New York City. I heard rumblings on it on social media. There's this storefront, but they're not really quite an LCS, and I couldn't wrap my head around what Bleecker was. So what was the vision when you had this idea of starting Bleecker Trading?
Mid-pandemic, 2020. Day to day, I work at a marketing agency. We do a lot of brand activations, a lot of work with events, a lot of work with talent, influencers, celebrities, athletes, a lot of work with content, production, strategy, you name it. And we were bored with really nothing to do and no connection for the hobby in New York City. Historically, Craig, you've been here a long time. There were not many shows, maybe that Midtown show in the 40s with 5 tables, where I used to see Sharon back in the day. But you had to travel outside the city. There really was no community gatherings or anything taking place, shape, or form. So for us, we didn't know anything about running a card store. We knew about customer experience, consumer engagement, how to make a brand cool. And we just looked for a space that would allow us to do that. We got very lucky and fortunate that the West Village, which is an incredible place to be, right? We have Fanatics headquarters down the block. We have a handful of hobby executives that live near the area. The rent was super cheap, and we were able to almost be begged in by the landlords at that time. We saw a very unique space with a backyard right off of Bleecker Street. If you know New York City, any type of outdoor space is rare and valuable. And again, we didn't have what to do, but we had a group of skilled marketers around us. So with some passion for the hobby, amongst a handful of people with different experiences, and then driving passion for me from an entrepreneurial standpoint, we decided to open up a space, really not knowing what it could be. We knew that the hobby had 3 challenges or problems we wanted to solve. There was no presence for New York City. There was no badge value for current collectors. Carmine's wearing a Bleecker Trading hat. You didn't see a lot of Tops or Panini Prism hats, or sweatshirts from Leaf really being worn in any circle, whether it was hobby circles or non-hobby circles. And so we thought that, customers are making investments, and we were, right? I was buying Jordan rookies. Those were my cards at the time for the long term. And you're going to a game and you see a guy sitting on the floor wearing a Rolex hat, or he's wearing a Ferrari hat, or he's wearing a Wynn hat, or he's wearing a golf shirt from one of the most prestigious golf courses. Yet we have guys that have mantle rookies, that have cards in briefcases that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars combined, and they have no badge value. And so, for what we do, we saw that as a very solvable problem. And then, lastly, we saw that, the person wearing that Rolex hat or driving that Ferrari doesn't really accept us, doesn't really look at the hobby as anything but more of a, the guy working in the Simpsons, comic book shop and some of those stereotypes. So our goal was, can we help, change the perception of the hobby to non-hobbyists? And maybe some of that is through branding and through merch and through events and through collabs. So those are really our three main goals of why we're going to try to do it. How we would create the hobby experience, we really had no clue. We didn't have access to product or allocation. Most of the cards that we sold were from mine or from our team's personal collection. And that's really kind of how we would fund things as we go. Need to pay another month of rent, wanted to throw another event. Luckily, I had a great collection that I had bought early. We had kept buying very strategically. We were able to move around while COVID was closed technically, because we were still going to the Dallas Card Show and getting our brand out there and making those moves. But ultimately, it was to really kind of attack those three problems. Where and what it would turn into, we didn't really know. It was a very short-term lease. I think it was less than 6 months was our original plan. So now we're a couple of years later. Our lease goes through, end of the decade now. So, different type of commitment than what we originally expected. However, we didn't really know what to expect. And I kind of like things that way.
That's great. That's the quintessential entrepreneurial mindset. I don't know what this is going to turn into, but I believe in myself and I believe in what we have here. So before we advance down the story, Mark, I'm interested because if you're not watching on the YouTube, you won't know, but I'll describe it to you that Mark's background says, "See who's this page and me and why." And it's a Snoopy on top of his doghouse from Charlie Brown. And that, of course, is a reference to Warning from Notorious B.I.G. And the combination's cool, just in the setup that you have for our call right here, Mark. So I'm interested, when you step into a space like the sports card hobby, when you're saying it's not really that cool or accepted enough to wear the hat like the Bleecker hat I have on, how do you try to brand that and make it cool like you've done with your background there?
It's a good question, Carmine. I think, it's something we get asked at our marketing agency daily. What's the first thing you would do to try to establish some type of cultural relevance for a brand? How do we start to put our toe in the water in an authentic way where we don't come off, as a poser, or we don't come off as someone trying too hard? And, I think a lot of what we try to do is we really look at what's driving the day-to-day passion for that core customer. And then where do they aspire to be that is actually achievable, right? And I think for our world, we looked at it as, from a fashion standpoint, where does fashion kind of get its trends, and then where does it transcend down to, especially when it comes to males? Males are mostly driven by music artists and athletes. Those are really the two big influences of, call it, men's fashion. To us, athletes are accessible. So we needed to come up with ways that we can influence the athletes. If we can influence the athletes, they may influence our demographic. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, if we influence the athletes, we may influence the non-demographic. We may influence people outside the hobby that see a player wearing our hat on SportsCenter and just think that's cool. For us, we needed to make the brand something that would then be aspirational for those athletes. And how we kind of tie that all together is really by understanding trends and understanding what we do very well is where the world is going. And so when we're looking at what we're going to be able to achieve with athletes who don't really understand trading cards, again, this is 2020. We didn't have Michael Rubin yet, right? So you didn't have athletes that understand trading cards. You also had a tremendous amount of NFT and collectability and random, let's call it fractional, and this world kind of being convoluted of everyone rushing into something. So how do you also cut through that clutter and be very direct while you're trying to establish that base? So the challenges for us were, how do we create something fashionable that an athlete can wear, that can achieve to that can be appealing to a local New Yorker who knows nothing about cards, and ultimately is going to drive badge value for our hobbyists. And when we looked at where that really starts, we looked at it from the hat, the sweatshirt, and the Instagram experience. And our mindset was, if we can create an experience for any one of those people that feels special, we might be able to get them to take a hat, or we might be able to get them to take a hoodie. If we could do that for them again, we might get them comfortable enough to share that on social media with us, or even wear it somewhere else. And if we pay very close attention to when those moments happen, to make sure we are pushing them out to everybody in our social ecosystem, we're then building acceptance. We're building authenticity by association. And we're not doing it in a way where we're trying to force it on anybody. We're bringing people into our world. Jalen Ramsey during the pandemic needs a place to watch a UFC fight, and all the bars are closed. Hey, Jalen, come take our lounge, invite your friends, bring in whatever food and alcohol you need. And when you leave, we'd love to just give you some shirts. And if you could take a picture in front of the store, we'd greatly appreciate it. That led to 4 more UFC fights for us with people like Jalen Ramsey. And you never know where our business goes from other introductions in those buckets. So it's a lot to unpack. But again, it's how you present your brand, how you treat people, who you look as aspirational, and how you make it accessible to all of your brand constituents. And it's something that we do every single day for every single brand we work with. So to us, it feels very tried and true. To a lot of people, they ask, hey, what's your secret sauce? And we've kind of come to terms that that's really what it falls into.
I think what you all do extremely well, just like you were very welcoming to Jalen Ramsey, I would say anyone that experiences Bleecker Trading is treated like VIPs. And that's credit to you. That's credit to your team. So, I mean, I could use my own students as an example. Jake has been a day one card club supporter. So my high school students, they come in, take them on a field trip. You guys give them some wax. You talk a little business. You've now created a dozen Bleecker fans for life. And now they know, like, wow, the trading cards, but this is cool. Oh, look at this storefront. They had an event with Dave East. They had an event with John Starks. And now we're mixing cultures. When I grew up in high school collecting cards, I didn't tell anybody about it. There was nothing cool about it. Now my students, me, it's like cool to say, oh, yeah, let's head out to Bleecker. So you guys did a really good job at that.
Yeah,
I appreciate you recognizing that. I think what some people don't put the work into, and sometimes we have to train some of the team members about this, is it's not just about who you're talking to. It's about who's watching. I can't tell you how many times a customer walks up to me and says, hey, I saw what you guys did for that person. I want to pay it forward to you guys because you're that type of place. And that's one thing that, makes me passionate about this hobby. When you talk about, I didn't promote that I was a card collector. If people saw racks, random act of kindness, right? If people saw how much of that went on and how well the hobby does treat each other, it's some of the nicest people in the world. We're in a weird business where you may not sell me a card for more money than you'd sell to Carmine. You take less money from Carmine because he's a nicer guy, or you don't like my attitude, or you think I'm going to quick flip it and not cherish it. Right. It's weird. You don't hold your stocks that way. You don't sell your house that way. We're a really good hobby. Most people don't see it because, unfortunately, there's a lot of bad, a lot of negativity, and that gets highlighted a lot louder. It gets clicks. I get it. I understand it. But what most people do not see is you're selling an item that has a $20,000 card potentially in that box. Whether it's the kid that you're talking to who may never buy a pack for more than $2, whether it's a 13-year-old who wants to sell you cards that really aren't worth anything, but you know the kid's been in there 10 times and the money's going back into your store, versus the kid going home and having an awful box of cards that have no liquidity, and he's going to go look for something else to do. One, you never know who anybody's parent is. You never know who anybody's friend's parents are, especially in our LA store. You never know who could walk in and who you could be impressing by doing the right thing. And in this industry, in this hobby, why wouldn't you go that extra mile? Like, with all of the negativity that happens, with all of the goodwill you could provide by giving a kid a free pack of cards, going into your dollar box for everyone that comes in and gives them something else. Someone you know is a John Starks fan, give them a John Starks card. But those little costs of doing it, they bring so much value to our business. And it adds all the way up to when you talk about your small percentage of customers that are really spending that big money, that are driving, they notice all of that. And they want to spend their, especially in this industry, they want to spend their money in a place that does right. We had our first monthly kids event that we rebooted. Customer pulls me aside and says, I know you're losing money today. I see your staff. It's probably like a restaurant staff that has to work brunch. Kids' days are not easy. He said, I appreciate what you're doing. I don't have kids myself, but I feel good that I shop here. And I don't make these things up, Craig. I don't feel any better about, oh, we got that compliment. It reinforces the business decision to act that way. So, part of what we do, again, at Cogent, at my day job, it's consumer experience. A lot of what I believe in at my agency is client service, customer service. We go above and beyond there. So to hire someone like Jake or Mike Kalpak or Jess, we feel that naturally when they walk in. Like, if that's not who they are, it's really hard to put them on the team. And that's not something you teach. That's something it's the way they're raised. It's something they're born with. And you can hire that. You can decipher that pretty quickly when you're interviewing people. And I really appreciate you recognizing that. Obviously we have a ton of passion for the kids you bring over. And I think the hardest thing this hobby has is keeping people from 14 to 17. I think it's where you lose most people, but if you keep them past 17, you're going to keep them till they're 30. And so it's important that you do bring young people like that around, because what I want them to see is people our age too. I don't want them to just see the stereotypical old dealers at the show. This is what I can grow up to be. Hey, at 14, when other interests come, I'm going to bail too. We have a 14-year-old that works for us. And I was very excited to give him a job because he wants to stay in the hobby. And so I think the more younger professionals we could bring down as mentors, as leaders, as examples to that 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old, the less we'll see them bail. And we'll hear a lot of those stories.
Shout out to Grant, by the way. He does a great job.
Does a phenomenal job. And his dad. His mom always asks for the new sweatshirt, but his dad really, dad shows up. His dad makes sure he's there, pulls him out when he's got big school projects. But yeah, it's a pleasure. We have a couple jobs open. We got some resumes from kids his age or a little older, and we're not scared to hire them.
Hell yeah. Good for you.
That's great. I was just looking here at the website, Mark, because I'm trying to potentially add to my Bleecker collection. You got a lot of stuff sold out, which is awesome that people are, buying the hoodies and hats, like you said, and everything in between. So I really liked what you said about, how you treat everybody equally, regardless of, you don't know what their status is or what their parents' status is. And one of my other buddies who ended up opening up a card store was talking about how he just happened to give away, a $20 card to some kid one day. And that kid's dad ended up becoming a guy who was backing his sports card store down the line, because it was like his first store. And then this dad witnessed that act of kindness to his kid, was clearly wealthy, wanted to continue promoting the sports card hobby space, and was able to fund future sports card stores for that guy. So that was just a great story. And so I'm interested to go back to where we left off on the development of Bleecker. So you guys had that space. You realized it was a great value. You had the outdoor space. You didn't know what it was going to be. How did you settle on sports card or trading welcoming type of space, or I don't even know how you would brand it.
Truthfully, we tried to stay out of the retail business for as long as we could. We were very fortunate that a lot of great brands stepped up and engaged us for events, engaged us for sponsorship, engaged us for consulting, engaged us for a lot of activities that paid bills. You used to hear people say things like, I don't get it. How does Bleecker make money? And there was a lot of things we did behind the scenes that paid those bills. It got to a place where we really did have an amazing, I'd say, frequency of strong trade nights, very well produced, very strong guest hosts. And we were creating a lot of fun activities in and around Bleecker. But it got expensive. It truly did. And as our team started to grow, Jake, Jess, the financial demands of it got heavier. At the same time, rounding out of last year's national, the hobby really got to a place where you could open up a card shop. Tops had taken over, and it wasn't as much of an old guard as a new conversation. And we were able to go from whatever we were beholden to from GTS to we can order product. We were able to develop a new relationship with them as well, starting with Jess and starting with some of the new people on their team that allowed us to not wait in line, let's call it, behind the 500 or few thousand card shops that already had that seniority over us. And we were able to really capitalize on, Craig, some of the things you mentioned. In the early days, there weren't enough sports card activities, so we brought in Call of Duty for a launch event. We brought in Hulu and Wu-Tang for their event. Ski was super instrumental in bringing a ton of those activities our way. But ultimately, we had enough knowledge, enough relationships, and enough local, I'd say, recognition in New York City to where it really made sense to put the focus into retail. And so just combined with a lot of good luck, a lot of good timing, right as the National was approaching, it was Hip Hop 50 week in New York City. Adidas and Run DMC approached us about renting the space out for a little bit. That was going to actually put some incredible upgrades into the space. And since we had to close down, we used that as an opportunity to really develop a stronger and more dedicated retail presence. At the same time, there were some whispers coming to open up a second store in a handful of cities. A lot of people see the work we're doing with Micah. Dallas is very heavily on our radar right now. And it's truly where we had been putting our focus. So the idea of some proof of concept in New York in a very small space made a lot of sense to us. However, something that was not expected, on the West Coast came our way at the top of the year and completely shifted all of our focus. That venue was going to be a 4-month project that would open in early April. And, to the Rizzo sports team's credit, they opened it up in 6 weeks. And so, insane process, at the same time really shifted our capacity and our thinking, especially coming out of a relaunch of a New York store. So, crazy transition from we want to see what we can create for events and sell our cards to try to see what we can survive with, to really developing those corporate relationships, to letting us just run an events business, to now really combining that with a pure retail experience that really should have taken about a year to get right. And just a couple short months, obviously, we're out west. I mentioned down south, we'll be headed there soon. And we have 1 or 2 other locations that we're currently in negotiations with right now. One not far from our current location. And a lot of it is still test and learn. I think the biggest thing about this hobby is innovation is still coming. We woke up this morning to a golden eBay PSA conglomerate relationship, right? We have PSA and Fanatics social media posting that they're buddies now. There's tons of startups that are maturing or not maturing. And so for us, I think we're still testing out a lot of what works. We're taking the data from what works and we're testing it again and really doubling down on it. And we have a handful of good things to apply it to. We are looking at live shopping and breaking as well. We have a studio space that we're moving into in about 4 weeks. We have no breakers, so that is a completely different challenge that we'll need to look into how we actually enter into that space. But for right now, everything is being tested, and I would stress to anybody who is being entrepreneurial in this hobby, this is the time to go. This is the time to try it. Everything is kind of moving. The trains are leaving stations, so we're all in right now. I don't know where this is in 2-3 years, but right now, while Fanatics, the way they're swimming, the size of that whale, I want to be next to it eating things. So we're going to be testing a lot, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. This is a great hobby to test it in.
It seems like you have really found your rhythm as far as the retail space. You sell singles, you sell wax, now that you got allocation, but you still have the events. And I feel like I'm seeing more and more events pop up, which is great. And then you got your lounge in the back to hang. And if anyone missed that tidbit earlier, that Mark sold off his cards little by little early on to help start up Bleecker. So, I mean, that's passion and dedication right there.
I had a lot of good arguments with Jake.
Sure.
A lot of things are PC to me. A Jordan Scoring King. Those are beautiful cards I grew up on. And to see those things go, obviously at a really nice markup for some of them, took a hit on a lot too. As we made our mistakes in the same time a lot of other people did too. But yeah, and that's where it's hard to give up, Craig, the lounge in the backyard, to just have a full store of showcases and a full store of wax, because it's just not fun. It really is fun to come to Bleecker, go to any card shop, sit down, hang out, feel like you're in your parents' basement eating pizza, opening packs of cards. No real adult supervision, as we call it. And that to us, it would be something to really, really treasure versus when we looked at the space, hey, just do 250 square feet of retail. If we carry the right products, if we are very good at refreshing our inventory, right? You can go to a card shop, the same one every day if they have new inventory. If we're really good about that, we don't need to overbuild the space. We can keep the hospitality elements, put some money into the backyard elements. And at the same time, a lot of shops are getting there now. And so I also pressure myself to say, like, if we don't do it, when do we become the antiquated ones? If we're not a step ahead of all of those things. So to us, we'll never be comfortable. We'll always push that envelope. I think with New York City, we'll get more card shops soon, and that will allow us to continue to decide who we want to be. But for now, I think we got a certain responsibility. People are traveling in. They come into New York. They want to see Bleecker Trading. They walk in, buy a card, and leave. We didn't do our job.
People reach out to me being my Instagram username being New York City Sports Cards. So I'll get random DMs. Hey, I'm visiting New York City. I'm a collector. Where should I go? And it's just like, just go to Bleecker. There's nowhere else you need to be. Bleecker's a place to be.
And look, I think that's where I'll push back on you guys a little bit for these podcasts. Google's my best friend. Google search drives our customer base right now. Topps is putting out product. Panini's putting out product that they want to buy. The content in the hobby is still not driving enough eyeballs. And that's where it's exciting to see what Darren has coming out, because more and more of those stories, they help, everything down to even a content creator with 50 followers, just pushing out more content every day. It's not hard-hitting journalism, but more and more of this in every bucket counts right now, because there's just not enough places to tell these stories, and none of them are American Idol, right? None of them are cutting through all the masses. So, it's important that we get more and more and more of this. And that's why I say, like, if you're thinking about the hobby, in my opinion, now's a good time to double down. Not to say go buy a bunch of wax or invest in things, but the business is strong right now.
Well, Craig, we've talked about countless times how we want to be the Ruben Studdard and Clay Aiken of sports card content. No, I'm just kidding. No, but just to continue your reference, Mark. But speaking of journalism, that's my day job as far as being a sports reporter, and so I picked out a couple great things that you said that kind of reminded me of Shark Tank a little bit as far as the entrepreneurial. Authenticity by association, which I really liked, as far as, getting the athletes or other people to wear your stuff and be brand ambassadors when they're out there and think that it's cool authentically, because that's what they want to wear. That's what they want to support, which is why I've worn this hat several other times, not just when the founder of Bleecker is on. And then the other thing that I really liked that, it overarches all startup business and not just specifically to Bleecker Trading, as being an entrepreneur, what we do well is what's coming next. That was so interesting because it's not the now, it's predicting the future trends, hopping on the future trends, and sometimes even starting the future trends. So I'm interested in your line of work with Bleecker Trading. What do you think is coming next as far as the development of the sports card hobby?
That's a good question. Not one that I'm probably going to have a really educated answer to. A lot of it is just gut feeling.
Yeah.
I think what's going to be coming next is hyper transaction and liquidity. Pay attention to this eBay PSA deal. They're making it faster for everybody. Grade, the data comes out quicker, put into your eBay account, let it sell, let it ship. You're going to probably touch the cards less. Repackers.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you hear the numbers they're paying?
Yeah.
We can't keep cards in the showcase because they'll clean us out at 80, 90%, right? Depending on what level. So I think the problem we had a year or two ago was liquidity. And cards took a tank. I think it's going to be the opposite now. It's going to be hyper speed selling. I think that's going to be a trend that technology is going to make faster comping, faster listing, faster, right? Everything's going to get faster. That will lead to faster sales. So I think that combined with the repackers driving the prices and driving the velocity of transactions, I think that trend is here for a minute. At the same time, I think Topps is doing a really good job. Fanatics Live is doing a really good job with the casino, with the bounties, the top 10 list. I think, give them time. Give them 12 months of that. Watch that expand. I think you're going to see a draft shark, a DraftKings is called, right? DraftKings. I don't gamble, but see a big DraftKings mentality coming to the hobby. Sorry, Draft Sharks is an old fantasy site I use for our stats. DraftKings. You'll see a little bit more of that, right? And so what's good about that is how disappointed are people when they do buy a box and don't get something, right? You hear some of the negativity. I opened a box. This is the worst rip ever. Well, maybe you got 1,000 Fanatics points, right? That got you into 2 free breaks because you bought in early to an MLB thing. Just give Fanatics time, right? Fanatics Live will get there. These bounties will get there. We see it in the store. People came in $55 to chase that Tom Brady card. $55 a pack to chase that card. That card's a hard card to hit. And it was boom, 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 boom. So you spread that out a little bit. I think you're going to have a lot of liquidity, a lot of that. And then you have all this technology bringing it faster. So more bounties, more speed to liquidity. Those are the areas that have me being, okay, we can invest in the retail because there's enough ways to move cards. Any other trend that, I would want to pay attention to, just the vaulting. I think that's a weird world right now with PWCC, PSA, eBay, giving it over to them. I do believe vaulting is the ultimate form of liquidity in this hobby. It's the safest, the fastest turnaround time, and the least amount of work. When you talk about transaction to transaction, right? It becomes like a stock.
Mm-hmm.
Again, all things I'm talking about have nothing to do with collecting.
Right.
I was just gonna say, I was gonna touch on that and say, I totally recognize as a shop, as a hobby, you got to sell wax to make money, and there are enough people out there who buy it.
Craig, who's leading the collecting conversation right now?
Carmine and I.
All right. Okay. So corporate America and the hobby, they're getting us to collect, but it's ultimately a liquidity conversation.
My question to someone for Fanatics is, they say, all right, I didn't mention this when we went on the card club field trip because I wanted to keep it about the kids. But my question would be, I don't rip, I don't gamble, I don't go on Fanatics Live. So Fanatics, what are you doing to enhance my hobby experience? I don't have an answer. That's just a question I would ask.
But Mark, where the money is at is more so with the buying of the packs. I mean, in my local card store, Brian Sports Cards and More, I'm the one in there buying a $200 Clemson football national championship ticket for $200, the big tickets. And all these other guys between 30 and 50 years old are buying $500, $600 boxes. They're getting $25 to $75 of cards back. But it's I mean, you got to look at where the money is. And it seems like more money is being, like you said, transacted in the ripping space. That's my opinion.
In a weird way, in breaking, yes, but in a card shop, Carmine, it's a little bit different. We will make more money on those singles you're buying than we will on the wax. There's not a high enough margin like we think with Panini and all that. Topps has done a good job of letting you make money, and it's not gross. I'd love to make more, but it's not unfair at all. It's a good, healthy margin.
Okay.
However, when that guy opens up a box and he sells us back the cards, and then he puts that money back into the store, and those cards go into the showcase at an immediate turnaround of a higher percentage.
Right.
A store's going to buy at what, 70 to 100%, right? I'm sure no stores buy at 100. I don't want to get slandered on here. A store is going to sell at 90 to 120. Again, I'm probably off, but being fair.
Yeah.
So for a store, you buy a box for $50. You pull some cards. You sell them to us for $65. You buy another box. We turn that 65 into 85. At the same time, we had 2 boxes sold and a customer hanging out for an hour. Energy breeds energy. We talked before about a customer seeing a good deed to a customer over here makes them spend over there. Customer opening a box breeds other customers opening boxes. It breeds a big Instagram moment. Wow, you pulled Whammy. Everybody's nuts. We posted on social. My phone blows up 5 times. Customers come in. It's like a lottery ticket at the deli. I heard someone pulled the Wemby here. I want to go here. So there's so much
lottery ticket at the deli. That's great.
But there's so many intricate ways to get value for a shop. If you don't think just what am I getting on my margin, right? If you're set up to buy, if your staff is friendly enough to where that customer doesn't want to take the card home and go see what he can get for it, wants to keep the experience going, and that all syncs together. Back to what you guys talked about from hospitality, back to what you talked about from branding, what I talked about, making it comfortable. Hey, you want to go sit in the back, hang out? We got New York City's best pizza for free in there. Use the bathroom. Oh, your wife's here with their kids. You can leave the stroller. That all adds.
Yeah, you guys have cool cards in the showcase too. So like the wax aside, you guys do a great job, I would say, of turning over inventory. And if you actually look in the showcases, the value boxes, there's something for everyone.
Well, the showcase is a unique, probably not unique, but it's a neat strategy we've picked up from other stores. I don't want to say unique because it was something we learned, but in the showcase we put a different price sticker, a different color every week.
Yeah, Mike
we know the 4 colors. we know the colors of the week. And at the end of each week, we take a certain color out of the showcase. We send it off to eBay consigners. We know if we don't wait too long, we can still get our margin out on the cards. We send them to eBay consigners. We do two great things. One, we don't do any work. The cost of doing the work is more expensive than the fee we pay the consigner on the sale. And that's the second great thing we do. We create enough margin for someone else in the hobby to make money. We're able to make just enough at the right time where the consigner can still get his and we don't take a loss. So every week we move whatever color is still remaining from 3 weeks ago out of the showcase. We do believe that this works very fast. It is hard to buy a card and get your money out of it the next day. However, if a card's sitting for 3 weeks, it could sit for 3 months. One thing I like to stress, we're Bleecker Trading. We are not Bleecker Storage. So we are here to sell our items. Beautiful items come in that I love. They're here to go. Right now, what's our most popular item? Taylor Swift signed CDs encapsulated in PSA slabs. Why? We're about 2 blocks from her apartment, which is a tourist destination.
Oh.
A lot of those families come down with their kids. Those kids also collect cards. When they walk in, there's a beautiful PSA slab Taylor Swift autograph for $300-400 staring them in the face. They all pick it up. Not every family can just spend the money, but enough do. And again, right when that happens, you endear yourself to the family walks in and goes, I don't want to stay here. And they say, okay, you got 5 minutes to pick out your cards to. Oh my God, let's look around. Maybe there's something else. And now we have a 25-minute experience and a 5-star Google review. And we tell them to go get pizza and eat in the back. And now there's 4 more people in an empty store at 2:00 on a Thursday for the next people that walk in and feel more comfortable and feel more discovery and want to just engage with our brand.
I love the entrepreneurial notes that you're dishing out here, Mark, because there's so many different things to think about at once, and the tangential connections that you and your staff have clearly thought of that a lot of other people who are just thinking cards would never have the blinders off well enough to see, and like Craig brought it up recently when he was, speaking of trading, he was at the White Plains show at the county center and he was trying to trade this guy. And he said, they're called trading cards because this guy was allergic to trying to trade Craig as a dealer. And the dealer turned around and said, actually, they're selling cards. So what does that do tangentially? That not only creates no transaction during that time, that also creates I'll never return to your table again or even look at your showcase for a possible, transaction because of that one bad experience. You guys clearly doing it on the positive end and getting people to come back. But because you mentioned that Taylor Swift, that's the most popular, not in the card space necessarily, but, the item space. I want to get your thoughts as somebody who's looking at what's next in the sports hobby, because I've been getting into tickets like I talked about. And I recently got this one. And I've been trying to get tickets that either make you remember a game, an event, or somebody's last time doing something. So I want, kind of something that's going to make you, wow, that was cool. Or that was a moment in time. And I got this ticket, which has controversy attached to it, which I also like in sports. When the first game that Colin Kaepernick took a knee for the national anthem, that's a moment that nobody's going to ever forget, not only in sports history, but in cultural history. And, regardless of what side of it you're on, it's a moment that you will never forget. Or this Larry Bird media pass autographed by him from his rookie season. So I'm interested to get your take. What do you think about the future of tickets or sports merchandise in that non-sports card hobby realm? Like, what's the future of that in your opinion?
So as a collector, I've been forced into that realm because owning a shop and being a collector is so much conflict of interest. So I try to collect things that we can't really sell, or if we do, we hold 2 or 3 of in the store. I collect graded He-Man figures and other toys. I collect a lot of graded Photos, I love to see photos authenticated in a PSA encapsulation versus a regular sticker in a frame. I think it's just a different piece of art. I have a massive Type 1 collection. I got into it a couple years ago. I caught the bug of every picture having a different Jordan sneaker in it and was like, wow, what would that art look like of all Jordan 1 through forever, right? Like,
wow,
the brain starts going. Like I said, Taylor Swift, things like that. I'm not a total junkie. I've stayed a little bit out of some of the categories. However, like, I have a passion for 90s hip hop. So graded music, specifically audio cassettes, mean a lot to me. I know how hard they were to get, how to in a good condition and keep sealed. I know what the artwork meant. And 90s hip hop seems to be a very popular category that's selling well in that space. So I'm a very big buyer of anything you can grade and encapsulate that's an alternative collectible. I believe once you encapsulate something, it becomes art you can share with non-hobbyists. And that's why I love a PSA card, a PSA Type 1 photo, a graded ticket, a graded piece of a graded video game, a graded art, graded VHS. Now, I don't own any graded VHSs, but I do own a graded video game. Some people have said to me, don't you think that's a little contradictory? VHSs and video games, like, it's kind of fake in a sense of, is it really this or is it really that? And what I just go back to is it art to me? Mike Tyson's Punch Out is art. I would wear a Mike Tyson's Punch Out t-shirt if it was done cool. So an original Mike Tyson's Punch Out sealed video game in a box that guarantees it that I can stand up nicely is art. I don't care if it goes up or down in price. And Carmine, that's how I look right now at a lot of those alternative categories. But I look at them in a different lens. We at Bleecker have invested in a handful of businesses in the space. PSA, was one that, we were collectors, I should say. It was one that we were able to invest in early on. And I think what we looked at there was there's new cards being printed every day. So grading cards will continue to be a liquefied marketplace. If I was to invest in that same business, but in items like tickets, video games, things that have gone digital, I'd be concerned that with the lack of manufacturing, there's a lack of an addressable marketplace for collectors to stay collecting and in it. So if you collect concert t-shirts, every year another concert t-shirt turns 10 years old. If you collect tickets, there's a point where there's no new tickets. If you collect VHS, there's no new VHS. Now, I know the commemorative tickets are coming out, but I'm saying in generality.
Yeah.
If you collect music, there will be an end to how many tapes will get graded. So I do look at it from a long-term perspective of, can they build a big enough collectible community that stays active for your kids' collections? If not, then I look at it as, can I sell it as I collect it, driving a trend where I land on a grail of grails? If you ask me what a grail of grail is in music, it could be something Biggie or Tupac or Wu-Tang with all 10 members with Old Dirty Bastard signed to it, right? So that may be an area where I would want to consolidate, buy and sell to land on a grail, and then keep it moving outside of the category. But keep one or two things that have high collectability to me because they have nostalgic value in it that I know there's 10, 20 other people in my price range that may want this one day.
Yeah.
I call that the melting ice cube effect. There comes a time where there just won't be any more VHSs to grade.
I like that. And it's a good point you make because maybe the next generation, they won't care about VHSs. As opposed to, perfect example, I was at the Sunday Showcase Spectacular at Bleecker a couple times ago, and there was a 13-year-old kid there, and I was set up next to my buddy Wiz, the collector, and he had a Kanye West signed CD. This 13-year-old kid comes over. He's like, "That's what I want." And you got this 13-year-old kid paying $400 for a Kanye signed CD.
And look, that kid may have went to a concert that he never forgot. He may have a T-shirt that speaks to that he never forgot. You know, Carmine, that's where I do like tickets a lot. I do believe tickets tell a massive story, to your point about, you know, the ones you have. I think that is something that's cool because you do put that on a mantle. You do take that out to show somebody, hey, let me tell you about a time that happened in sports.
Yeah.
That to me, I am a big believer of that. And I do love a lot of the early 90s basketball tickets. I do collect those. You look at some from like the Orlando Magic years when Shaq played, or like when Jordan's years when they won their championships. The artwork, the pictures on the ticket, like they're as good as old Skybox cards. They're a ton of fun.
Carmine, show us the MSG ticket.
Oh, I have it. Hold on, I'll get it for you real quick. It's another Knicks related ticket.
But
those to me are great. They're fun, but like you find the Seattle Sonics, Sean Kemp one, right? They're incredible, but you got to know the other 4 Kemp fans to be able to move that. And it's never going to be, oh my God, look at the ticket market. Your Kemp is going to go.
Hey, I just picked up Patrick Ewing champion jersey. Something about the products from the 90s which just hit different.
With all oh wow, that's so cool.
Here it is, Mark. So this is for anybody who's not watching, the 2003 New York Knicks, March 9th. And this is Michael Jordan's last game at Madison Square Garden. So, and this is a PSA 6, but Mark, to your point, it's the highest graded copy in existence. But I got this for $250. And I'm like, I just think that the ticket market is so undervalued for, like you said, the piece of sports history, the fact this is the highest graded copy, the artwork. Jordan scored 39 in this game, and they lost by 1. You know, his final game at the Mecca. I mean,
and
to me,
I'm sorry,
like a no-brainer.
I can't see, but would you mind? I want to shout out PSA on this. Can you read the label, how they describe it?
Yeah. So on the top line, it says 2003 New York Knicks / March 9th. And then the second line says NYK 97 WSH 96, because, of course, Jordan was on the Wizards at the time, / Michael Jordan. And then the last line, this is the key one that you're probably going to want to talk about. Last game in New York - MSG.
There you go. To me, they take a ticket and they tell that line, that extra story, makes it collectible. If you go through my storage, you go through my stuff, it's all stuff that you'd be like, this is what you collect. What's wrong with you? It's all things that tell those stories.
But that's the huge key of the sports. Like you mentioned, Mike Tyson's Punch Out. You know, here I have 1965 Ali versus Liston, and in the PSA label, it has Phantom Punch, and it also has first fight as Muhammad Ali, and that makes it, you know, you like you said, it makes somebody who's not in the hobby find it interesting because it's a sports story. Or this Daytona 500. And on the last line from 2001, Dale Earnhardt's last race.
Yeah. And look, I'm not even a racing fan. The second you said 2001, I said Dale. Me, it's super cool because you may not be in the hobby, but you may see that ticket and you may have been at that race. You may have been at that fight. And now you're bringing it in. And so, you know, I think like a lot of that stuff makes this better. I'm excited about that as a collector. And as you look at alternative categories, I think it brings more people that collect. I shouldn't say that. It brings more people aware that things are collectible. The Golden Show, King of Cards. Is that that's right?
Collectibles, I think.
King of Collectibles, excuse me. I like the King of Cards kid from Miami. He's a good dude. But I'm all way off today. But like that show, for example, I live in a neighborhood where nobody cares about Bleecker Trading. In fact, when they see Bleecker Trading, they think I'm a bonds trading shop down in the village somewhere. But that show has made people think, is my furniture collectible? Is my china collectible? Is my mom's wardrobe collectible?
Right.
And it started out having people say to me, "Hey, do you guys know Golden Auctions?" Random people, people loved Alex and, things like that. They're bringing that up to me. It goes to show the more you make these categories established as a collectible, even if grading doesn't go through the roof or prices, if you can establish it and then most importantly, encapsulate it. It's recorded, it's set, and it looks cool. And that's the difference between me saying to my wife, "Oh, I got a piece of lyrics from the Beatles," to look at this framed, gorgeous, descriptive, authenticated piece of lyrics from the Beatles. That goes from, "Can you keep your cards in the drawer?" to, "Sure, display that one in the room."
I think the displaying is a key piece. Unfortunately, I only have 750 square feet to work with, but I'm always thinking like, this memorabilia piece would look cool in my future home, or this one would.
Yeah, and then look, that's where I stress vaults. Try to leave the National this year. Look at how many cards you have or don't have. Go over to PWCC or go over to Golden or whoever, I don't know what vault is called what now, but go over to whoever has a vault. Tell them to take it home for you. Take 30, 40, 50 cards you don't need to carry. Put it in a vault. I had 150 type 1s. I did not want to carry them. PWCC was kind enough to take them home for me. But it opened up my room a little bit. It allowed me to then sell some because I just hit the button. And the toughest thing with collectibles, like, you don't know what you have until like you really go through it all. And when we all do that late at night and reorganize, we're not selling, we're not organizing, we're just ADDing, right? So I'm a big believer in vaults, especially if you're at a card show. Why carry your stuff around home if you don't have to? There's fees and all that, but so is your time, so is convenience. That costs me the money. So I look at those as great partners.
I'm interested, Mark, because we, talked about so many great topics, and, Bleecker is where it is now, which in our title is the place to be, among several other things, a successful business as well. What was the biggest, I don't want to really say mistake, but where did you slip up that you guys, during this process? I'm sure there were multiple challenges, but one part where you were like, "Ooh, we probably shouldn't do that again," and then what you learned from it?
So many, Carmine. If I was to pinpoint one, it would be unfair to everyone who's worked so hard. We opened a retail shop. I don't know if anyone remembers. It failed fast. We were very fortunate that Dan Fleischman and the Cards and Coffee team came in with under 2 weeks' notice, took the other side of the lease from us, retained the staff, and kept the card shop in there for us.
Wow.
That was a big disaster. Breaking was a massive disaster. And just, I'd say, buying in 2000 and what was it, 22, from January to March. Yeah, those were our biggest mistakes. But look, we learn every day. I'm very fortunate that this is not my core business. I have a full-time job, so I can take a risk or two when we do things. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Again, our big mission is to do something if somebody else isn't doing it. If someone's doing it and they're doing it well, I'd rather hang out.
Well said. And as far as the future is concerned, obviously you've already expanded. I mean, you got a shop in the West Village in Santa Monica. Location. I assume there's more expansion in talks in the future. Like, what's Bleecker gonna look like 1, 2, 5 years from now?
I don't know what will be in 5 years. The judgment is still out in my mind if you can have a real national chain. I don't see that being so simple. I think there's something to be said about the person who owns or operates the shop being there every day, and how you replicate that in 20 different experiences. We're not selling screws and screwdrivers. If this was auto parts, it would be great. But Craig, if you and Carmine each opened a store in Dallas and Florida, we all were under New York City Sports Cards brand, we still got a PC.
Valid.
We're still collecting. We're still wanting to sell our own on the side. How do you do that with 9 stores and 9 different managers and 10 different owners? How do you, again, it's not screws and screwdrivers. There's an emotional attachment. There's an affinity for each product, for each SKU. So for me, the few classes I paid attention to in college or my marketing management business classes, and maybe I didn't pay attention close enough because I'm thinking of some of the mistakes I did make in LA. You don't go, at least in international business, they taught you don't go open something in another country without having locals run it, right? You adopt the local customs versus trying to bring your customs over. I'd argue Santa Monica and the West Coast is much different than the West Village. So I think certain things we want to learn there. On the same time, is New York City dense enough? A lot of restaurant owners have the same concept in 5 different parts of just Manhattan, let alone multiple boroughs. How much more effective can I be if I went from uptown to downtown to left town to right town versus getting on a plane to Dallas, getting on a plane to Florida, getting on a plane to Chicago, getting on a plane to California? What type of impact can I create? What type of synergies can I create with our staff, with our product, with our marketing spend? An ad in a taxi can go the whole city, right? So I think we're learning. What can we do that can be more vertically integrated that we can control? And so I think in Dallas, that's bringing up some questions about, do we focus on where we're weakest right now, which is content and breaking? And I think we have a few tricks up our sleeve with our partners there. And do we need a full retail space there? Maybe not. At the same time, our website is incredibly overwhelmed with traffic right now. So like we talked about, same day pickup. We have a new partnership with Uber Connect where we'll have their API on our site where you on checkout, Uber will come pick up the item and bring it to you. So I'm looking at New York City, Craig. If I live up in Connecticut, so if I can stay up and down the west side, I would be very happy. We are moving our offices a little bit closer to Bleecker. We do have a content/break studio, just happens to be in the building that we ended up taking. So we're excited about the growth there. But I'm excited to be back in New York, dude. I was in LA every other day for 2 hard months. We were supposed to open in April. We opened in February. Shout the Tops for bringing an incredible event to us. James Harden and Rip Night and all that was insane. But I was gone. I was gone the first 2 months, and the team held it down here. But like I said, if I was to really sum it up, this hobby is in a very strong place. It's in the mid-innings. So I just want to be doubling down wherever I can. You take some risks. You're not going to get them all right. I have, I think this is great for your students. Managing expectations and putting pressure on yourself, especially this day and age with social media and LinkedIn and all the competition in your face. And I say, is it a batting average or is it free throws? If I can go 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, y'all going to be collecting my card if I'm a baseball player. But Shaq, 6 out of 10, the worst free throw shooter ever, right? So if I'm going 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, I'm happy. If I measure myself that I got to be 80, 90%, especially in taking some business risks in this hobby, I'm gonna have some dark days. So for me, it is a batting average versus free throws mentality in this business. Not every business. Some businesses, I'll tell you, my other business, I'm going 10 for 10, 9 for 10. If not, I don't feel success. But for right now, I think as the hobby has a long way to go, and it's in a good tide of it, we're gonna swing.
Yeah. That's great. And I think we don't want to take too much of your time, Mark, but I did want to ask one more question. But before I ask that, I just wanted to say about the risk-taking part of it, because I think if you think about taking risks in life, just as a philosophical aside, and you're like that 80, 90%, man, I really got to make sure I'm going to be successful in this or else I'm not going to try it. In certain places, that might be the appropriate way to do it. But if you're thinking 80, 90%, the chance of you actually taking that risk is very small compared to if you look at it as a batting average, your chance of actually taking that risk is much higher because you're much more willing to accept the bumps in the road, the failures, the mistakes, and overcome them because you really believe in them. And all of us, I moved out to Casper, Wyoming from a job at ESPN. That's a big risk. but I was okay with doing it because I believed that that was the right way to go about the life I wanted to live and the purpose of, delivering sports stories to local, people in the area. Same thing with you. Same thing with Craig, starting this card club. I don't know what this is going to be. I don't know if these kids are going to buy in, but guess what? I think it's worth it. I'm taking an educated risk and going after that part of it.
You know what? To me, it's about planting seeds, come up with a lot of these terms, but you got to plant those seeds. You got to do it. Risk taking, whether it's 3 out of 10 or 9 out of 10, if you don't have the foundations there, your chance of success is lower every time. For us, I mean, you want to look at it blatantly the other way. We got to know Craig as a guy who walked into the shop, and we got to know him as a guy who was a teacher and then had some interesting stories around what he's talking to his students about with cards. Then we got to know him as a card club, and it was a really good thing that we felt we could support. Then we saw him on TV, and we're clapping away. And what happened last week? He walks in, he hands me a Topps baseball card with Bleecker on it. In all niceties, like, I mean, excuse me, but like one of the best days in Bleecker history is, where's my camera, is Jess, it's one of the best days in our history. This is an accomplishment that we've done. And so, where do things come from? You have no clue. You have no clue. If we hadn't started 3 or 4 things I mentioned that failed, we may not have been in the position to do what we were doing today. We still get calls and mentions about Hulu and Dave East. If we didn't take the second space, which arguably was a disaster, where we had nothing to do with it, we wouldn't have done the pop-up with Hulu. We would have never been able to pull it off. If we didn't do the pop-up with Hulu, which happened to be the same week Ski was dropping his Wu-Tang card. If we didn't have the second space, we didn't have a second window to give Ski the Wu-Tang card. You add both of those things together, plus Dave East, people still bring that up. Whatever we lost on that space was way worth it for the marketing value. And we gained a backyard by combining 2 spaces out of it. So, if you would have said to me, Mark, invest in this space, you'll get the backyard, but it's going to be a disaster. And in a year or 2, you'll figure itself out. I said, that's not a good idea, guys. But you got to plant those seeds. You got to take those risks. Now they got to be calculated. If you're saying to yourself, look, this is a free throw measurement business, and you're not a 90% shooter, and you're an 80% shooter, okay, plant some seeds. But if you're going at batting average for free throws, don't play the game. It's that simple. So for us, we try to take calculated risks. At the end of the day, we have 3 goals, right? Like I talked about, and as long as we're hitting those, we feel that we're doing it for the right reason. If you're doing things for the right reasons, somehow the world works itself out for you. You learn, but that's part of the fun. And at the end of the day, it's cards, right?
Yeah, right.
It's fun. It's hard. It's not surgery. You open a pack, you don't get anything. You do a bad deal. You sold the card too early. You didn't mess up some brain surgery. That's an industry you can't be going for batting average if you're doing a surgery. You better be going 99% if you're trying to go for that. But it's nice that there's some room to mess up with this. And one of our phrases, Mark, if we were to do our branding, maybe we could hopefully consult you after this podcast, but would be Tony Gwynn, hitting singles, hitting doubles, the occasional triple, but that's one of the phrases that Craig came up with as far as that. But I don't want you to get away without just quickly hitting on, since Fanatics has taken over and everything, what's been the difference or the way that they've tried to, get in touch with the sports card stores? Look, they've just been open. It's funny. I travel a lot for business, not for cards, but I go to a card shop just like every other one else when I get off the plane, and I go to small cities, and some of these places don't have relationships with Fanatics or haven't had it over the last year, and they're developing it now. And they think of Fanatics like a Death Star, like, oh, when is Fanatics going to call me? And with Fanatics, at least from the folks I've met, they've had the other approach of, when are you going to call us? Like, we just don't know what we don't know. We're learning as we've all, again, I'm going back a year or two as we've all got here. So I'd say in one aspect, Fanatics, at least to me, feels approachable. And I don't say that just for us being in New York City around the corner from them. When I've spoken to these other stores, For example, I see the way they treat Skybox out of Connecticut, which is my local shop, who up until a year ago really didn't even have a relationship with them. But once Fanatics knew they existed, it really seemed like they saw a great shop, great people, and did the right thing. What I see most of those, back to what I talked about with the Brady example, those bounties are driving people in the store. The buybacks, we do a double buyback. If for Topps Chrome MVP buyback, if it's 20, we pay 40 if you rip it in store. We'd see a mass velocity of customers when Topps and Fanatics do those promotions. So when I spoke to them, I just said, thank you for that. Please, the more promotions, and we're doubling down on them with our own money, but please do that. And they ran them well, and they ran them clean, and we got paid fast, and it was easy to submit. So they're making products like Debut. I think I saw the bat handles now. You saw like a couple players. It looks like there's something going on there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, pay attention. I saw the bat handles. That stuff drives people in store. A couple of my friends who think the hobby's for nerds will write me and be like, yo, check out the MLB debut patch. One of my friends actually wrote me that the other day. I'm like, man, it's been out for a year, but it got on his non-hobby radar. Mm-hmm. So I think they're doing what they can. Look. Credit to Michael Rubin, right? He's putting all these celeb athletes in, and they're probably not paying them what they normally get paid day to day. So he's cashing in every favor he has, or he's creating new favors for himself to get these people to pay attention to something that they didn't grow up on, maybe. Maybe it's not even something that's in their culture at all, right? And so it's pretty cool to see Meek Mill in Atlanta at Cards HQ, right? You would have told me 2 years ago, Meek Mill and Jeff Wilson. Yeah, right.
Listen, Antoine Griezmann follows me on Instagram, so that's pretty cool.
So we're famous in France because Antoine came to our store in New York and posted, and we get people that show up because that still goes in France. They walk into New York City. I think Fanatics is doing a great job at just making that part of the hobby accessible. And we're in my day-to-day marketing world, Tom Brady is the most inaccessible human being ever. Yet you see things out of Tom Brady you would have never seen. So I think it's just, again, access. Has just been really the key that they bring.
Greg, I think you're muted. I mean, we had such great access to Mark. I hope you try to capitalize here.
I was going to say, as far as just putting feelers out there and trying things, we're 84 straight weeks talking cards. Bleecker has 3 storefronts now, or 2, possibly a 3rd in the works. We got a card club trading card with Bleecker in it. Whatever we're doing right now, we're as my students like to say, we're in motion. There's a lot of motion happening. So
I like that term. I'm gonna borrow it a little bit.
I've heard, that's been a popular phrase this year. We got a lot of motion right now.
I have a term I use, which is a little before that, which is it's let's roll. And that's an old 9/11 phrase from one of the groups of people that took down the plane. But I heard that one day, and I thought what that person's mentality was. I don't want to ever try to compare business to that, but I like what you said. We're in motion now.
We're in motion.
We're in motion. I like that. I'm gonna use that.
You
learn something from anywhere. And again, your kids are a pleasure. I think we should look at formalizing some more things with them as we grow. I think it's great for the hobby. Love to see it in more cities and more people take advantage of it too. So hopefully that's something we see soon down the road too.
Definitely. And look, we've been here for over an hour, so couldn't thank you enough for your time. I know you're a busy man, so thank you for this.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you guys. Talking Bleecker, talking hobby. I mean, what I could spend 24 hours. So thank you guys. I hope this wasn't too long. Feel free to cut anything, especially when I didn't sound smart. I would appreciate it.
No. Unedited, Mark. Everything's in because everything has something to learn from in this one.
Well, it was a lot of fun for me, so I really appreciate you guys considering me for this, and I hope we lived up to Randy Moss's number.
Definitely. Straight cash.
All right, guys. I appreciate it. Be good.
Peace.